Good afternoon. My name is Betsy Andrews Parker, and I'm with the Community Action Partnership of Stratford County, just one of 5 community actions here in the state of New Hampshire. And I'm here with the incredible Sharon Talton, who works with our Housing and Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Good afternoon, Sharon.
Hi Betsy, how are you today? Glad to be here.
I'm doing fine. It feels a little weird that you're in one end of the office and I'm down here, but we're being COVID safe, and we're going to actually show people today about our emergency rental assistance program. This is a new program that's in partnership with the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority and also with the CARES Act and relief funding, as well as the Gopher committee here in New Hampshire to help offer rental assistance to folks who are impacted by COVID. And we just want to take probably the next maybe 8 to 10 minutes to walk through an application in case you're wondering what it's all about or have a little confusion of what should I do and how do I get started. So Sharon's going to share her screen with us through the magic of technology and walking you through an application. So one of the first things that we want to point out is that this is a program for everyone in the state of New Hampshire. Now, Sharon, where did you go to as I'm looking here on the screen?
Right, yeah, Betsy. So I went right to capnh.org, which is our statewide community action website.
Wonderful. And so when you get to this website, you do what, Sharon? What do I do as I'm sitting here, either on my phone, tablet, or computer? What would I do for my next steps?
Right, so you can go right down here to the Apply Now button. It will state that if folks are looking for a Spanish version of the application, they could click here and get a PDF version in Spanish, just so folks know that in case they need that. So what we could do is click Apply Now. That's going to bring us right down through some information about the program that folks could look into if they'd like. So down here, it's going to give us some information about the different community action agencies throughout the state, which areas they service. So if you happen to know which county you live in, then you are in a good spot. If not, you can click right here on Start Your Application.
That's one thing that people should know, that no matter where you live in New Hampshire, there are 5 community actions that serve every single town in New Hampshire. So for this example, we're going to be working through Stratford County and whatever town you're going to apply for today. But let's give an example. So if I was applying, say, for Dover, for example, what would I do?
Right. So I can search Dover right now in our search box. It's going to bring me up. So if you have any other things, like for instance, Andover, but if you're living in Dover, you're going to get this little pop-up here that says that you're covered by the Community Action Partnership of Stratford County, our agency. So what you can do now is scroll down, and you're going to see links to each of the 5 agencies, which is why it's important to note which agency you want to apply to. Our systems are not linked, so you're going to want to make sure that you're clicking the right Apply Now button. So I'm going to go to the Community Action Partnership of Stratford County.
Absolutely. So yes, so again, if for some reason, if I really lived in Andover but clicked on Dover, an application would get pushed through, but then we'd have to undo it from our agency and get it to the correct agency over there. So it's really important that people find their correct spot where they go to. It's always amazing to me. You may work in one county but live in another county, and people get things mixed up. I know I do all the time, so it's really important that we do that. Now, for this thing, we actually do some program pre-screening, and so walk us through like how we would actually start the actual application and what's important.
Right, definitely, Betsy. Yeah, so we're going to want to put on our head of households information. That's going to look different for some folks. There's some households that only have one adult member, so that would be the obvious choice. Some households have multiple adult members, so you're really going to just want to choose whomever is going to be the primary person on the application. So we could go ahead and go with our friend here, George Test. So we're going to put our date of birth in. If you do pull up the calendar, just note that it's going to be the current month with the current year. So it might just be easier to type in, only because you're going to want to make sure that your the year of birth is correct. Email. So this is a primarily web-based program. I mean, we are applying online. If you don't have an email, you can definitely get a PDF version of the application, or you can go down to your local community action agency in person and potentially pick an application up or have one mailed to you. But it's really important that you have an email in here that is functional, that you're able to check, because that's going to be the primary method for us to contact you.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we've learned is always double check your email when you're putting it in there. And I see if you've had a different email address, maybe in the past you've applied to community action, please always use the same email address because it links up, and we also want to make sure that we have everything correct. So yeah, a phone number is also really important. We want to, I know, Sharon, we call people and leave messages all the time, but sometimes voicemails are not set up.
Yes, that's definitely important, is to make sure that you're using a current phone number with a working voicemail, because if for whatever reason we're unable to get through to you via email, we're going to try to call you. And sometimes what happens is folks' voicemail boxes are full, or they got a new phone and they didn't set up their voicemail. It's really important because, again, if there's any information that we need to verify, and we have no means of verifying it, that's going to hold your application up. So you want to make sure that your voicemail box is set up and accepting messages, and that you're checking it regularly. Although for this program specifically, the email is going to be the primary contact method.
Wonderful. And if you're like me, oftentimes I don't respond to phone numbers that I don't know who's calling. So again, having your voicemail set up and your email, checking for things in spam and your spam folder is really important. Now, housing
Definitely.
status, that's actually interesting. People say, what is my housing status? Well, there's a lot of different choices I could have here.
Yeah, Betsy. Yeah, so there's a lot of different choices. The main really important thing to note, is that unfortunately for this program, homeowners are not eligible. So if I was to click homeowner here, it's not even going to let me advance my application. When I actually go to submit it, it's going to pop up with something saying, sorry, you're ineligible. If I am a mobile homeowner with lot rent, I may be eligible for my lot rent portion of my housing expenses, not mortgage or tax assistance, but just the lot rent. So you could click mobile home with lot rent. But yeah, it is very important that you choose the correct housing status when you're doing the application, because again, that's going to assist us in knowing what documentation you might need to provide. Sometimes we can help with relocation costs through this program. So if you are in a shelter or homeless, it's important for us to kind of know exactly where you're coming from, if you will.
Absolutely. And again, the one big change from our program that we had last time to this one is that last time around, if people remember, we could actually help homeowners, but unfortunately, the way that the act was rolled out this year, there is no assistance through this program for homeowners. There's other different types of assistance, but not through this one here.
Definitely.
So if we move through, so now we've got this part. Am I done? Is it? Oh.
No, actually, yes. So there are a few more screens here. So you are going to be getting a spot here to set up a portal if you'd like to. This is a brand new feature. We're really excited for this, as it's going to help folks if you are unable to, let's say, your kids were napping and then all of a sudden they wake up and you're unable to complete your application. You can actually set up your portal. You get a link in your email to kind of go back to the spot where you had left off. So that's really great because then you don't have to kind of start all over again, if you will, if you were kind of like almost done and then you get interrupted for whatever reason. But you can skip that.
Story of my life, Sharon. Story of my life. This is great. So again, this is sort of like a TurboTax feature, or when you're doing some other application online, you can save where you were, which is a wonderful feature and a change from last time that we had.
Great. Yep, exactly. Yep. And so you could skip this function if you'd like. So you could just go straight ahead.
Which we will, just for the sake of this. Now, here comes sort of the meat of the meat of our application.
Correct. Yep. So it's going to pre-fill everything that I put in here. And as Betsy said, it's very important if you had an email already on file, if you've ever worked with the CAP before, this is going to help link to your existing household in our system. So that's kind of why it does that pre-screen. But it is nice. It pre-fills everything, so you don't have to re-type it in again. So I'm going to pick my demographic information here. And so this function right here is important. How many people in your household? So let's say it was George and his 3 kids. He could put 4, and then it's going to drop down with a spot for him to add additional household members. For the sake of time, we're just going to say that George is a single guy. So we're going to put in 1 just so that we can keep moving along here.
Now, as you're typing this in, I just want to point out anywhere where there's an asterisk, it means the information is required, and you can't actually move forward to the next part of the application without having this done. You can always save your draft and come back to it, but it's really important. Again, these are data points and demographics that we are required to get through the program, but also does help us to really figure out, again, if we're seeing a large number of applications from particular counties or census tracts, or sort of what's going on.
Exactly, yeah. And so if you had a different mailing address too, The important thing too is to make sure that you are going through and clicking the things that are applicable to you, because again, if I had a different mailing address and I left it as no, there's no spot for me to put anything in here. But if I check yes, then it's going to pop down with more places here for me to type something in. But if I have the same mailing address as my physical address, I can leave that as no and move on. So here we have household income. This is important because this is an income-based program. So we're looking for the income of all family members, even those who are under 18, if they're receiving Social Security income or anything like that. This is your household income, gross monthly household income.
And we always encourage everyone to put in everything and don't guess of whether or not you qualify. We're trying, because if you don't qualify for this program, there are other programs that Community Actions offer that could also be of assistance as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's, yeah, there are, and a lot of times too, I find sometimes people will overestimate their income. So if you ask them, they'll think, oh, I'm not going to qualify for that. But then when they actually submit the paperwork, they end up qualifying. So it's important to just apply and see what happens, kind of thing. So right here, you could check off if you're receiving any of these types of assistance. You may be required to submit paperwork, but again, this might help in verifying whether or not you're income eligible, because a lot of these programs, the income thresholds are actually lower than what it is for this program. So these 3 questions here, 4 questions, really speak to the pandemic related nature of your housing emergency. So if you've been on unemployment at all during the pandemic time period, so they're going all the way back to March 13th of last year, 2020, if anyone's been unemployed, even if you're not currently unemployed, even if you had to click no here, if you had been on unemployment during the pandemic and have become reemployed, you might still be eligible. Or if somebody even just lost hours, even if you didn't qualify for unemployment, let's say you were in the service industry and the place that you were working at did not have the business to maintain the regular hours and they had to close 1 day a week because they just didn't have the payroll to be open, you may still qualify as well. It's all about being able to substantiate that COVID related reason. So even if you can't get any documentation, you may be able to submit an attestation kind of in order to verify that, yes, this is the situation that occurred. This is why I've lost income due to COVID. And you may still be eligible. So even if you have to check no to 1 or more of these questions, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be ineligible. And again, even if you were ineligible for this specific program, even if I check no to everything, you may qualify for something else.
Well, and for example, Sharon, people who have children who have been on remote learning and they've had to take FMLA or unpaid leave to stay home with their children who were too young, or as I see right now, restaurants are having cases of COVID, and so they're shutting down, and daycares are having COVID and they're shutting down. So those are the things that people think about. And again, also reduced number of hours. People who used to work 5 days a week are now working 3 to 4. It all depends. Or again, reduced capacity in restaurants and those things. Those are all great things and reasons why people should actually apply.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. That's a yeah. So that's great. Again, it's all about being able to show that COVID impact. So, there's a lot of different ways that COVID's impacted folks. So it's not going to look like a one size fits all, even if you didn't qualify for unemployment.
And I think the best thing about working with a community action and working locally, while it's so important why you want to apply locally, is that here in Dover, New Hampshire, I mean, we're going to know what's happening with all of our school districts in the area and our restaurants. We read the paper, we read social media, versus I don't know what's happening maybe in Littleton or in Peterborough or other areas. So, I mean, working with your local community action, and you can vouch for someone. I do know that this school closed down or that this restaurant has been closed. So again, working with that local connection really makes a big difference. Now, here, utility bills, past due rent notice, eviction notices. How important is this information for you on this application?
Right, this information is very important. So even if I didn't have a past due utility, if I did have an eviction notice or past due rent, a lot of that is very important to note. We do process applications in the order that they're received. However, the goal of the program is to keep everybody stably housed. So if somebody was to say that they had an eviction notice, that's very important for us to know, so we can really work hard on getting that application moved along. as quickly as possible. So this is very important for us to note. This section here, you know, folks aren't aware whether or not they're paying more than 30% of their income. They could click on sure. I mean, a lot of people do pay more than 30% of their income for their housing, basic housing needs, which is, again, I think why COVID was such an impact, you know, because losing even just that couple of paychecks is really going to destabilize you.
Absolutely. And then the other thing about your living conditions, if they're unsafe and your risk of homelessness, again, those are questions that are required through part of our funding source. And we're trying to track, is really trying to look at trends and things that are happening in the area. So people say, why do I have to put this on there? Our response always is part of what, you know, the funder is asking for and part of what the CARES Act looks for.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would like to call attention to this save draft button down here. Again, you could go back to the application at another time if you needed to, but for now, I'm going to keep advancing. So this section is important because if you notice, again, it's a spot where I'm only going to get a drop down. So if I click current or past due rent, it's going to give me a spot to put in my landlord's information. As you can see, there's nothing for utility here because I haven't checked it. If you haven't checked that off, it's not going to give you that spot to kind of fill that in. So this is very important. If I uncheck rent, my information for the landlord goes away. It's very important because, again, it's difficult to process a rental assistance application if we don't know who your landlord is, because we're going to be looking to pay the vendor directly on your behalf if you qualify for the program. So it is important, you know, it's just going to expedite the application again if folks are putting in this information. So if you don't even check it, it's not going to give you a spot to enter in your landlord.
Now, while you're filling in our fictional landlord that we have, I apologize to ABC Landlord here in New Hampshire, but as your fictional landlord, again, this information is also really important for us to have so we can contact your landlord, because we will need to have the tax information from your landlord. We pay all vendors directly. In the majority of the cases, so 99% of the time, there's always exceptions to the rule, but we will not be giving past due or utility past due money directly to the clients. We do it to a landlord. So having a landlord's point of contact information is incredibly important. And then also how much you pay and what is due, because as we're filling out the check requests and verifying with the landlords, we want to be as close as possible, as accurate as possible, so we can make sure we're getting you caught up on your rent and avoiding any of these past eviction notices. So then there's some confirmation and attestations you have down here about landlords.
Right. Yeah. So it's you're going to be, again, the asterisks here. You're required to check this box, stating that you're not receiving any help for this rent. Like, let's say you applied and got help from city welfare, any other program. Perhaps you received assistance through our previous program from the Gopher, the governor's office program for last year's COVID rental assistance. We will verify with other agencies whether or not you've received that assistance. So you really can't kind of double dip on things because the time frame is the same. Some folks who perhaps did not get assistance last time or didn't know about the program last time could potentially get assistance for rent back through the entire pandemic if they are eligible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think that that's really important too, as we talk about that we do pay the vendor directly. And of course, with your utilities, you could have lots of different types of utilities and providers. You could have more than one. We're going to put in Eversource as well as Unitil, which are two real current providers that we have. And then again, those payments go directly. As someone who sees the amount that you guys process every week, I mean, you really do work really closely with these vendors to get the correct account information. Again, that's also really important when we go to the next, as you're filling us in, when we go to the next section with attesting what it is you have, but also uploading documentations. One of the best ways for us to process any of these applications as quickly as possible is to have the correct information. So account numbers, mailing addresses, all those things. The more information we have, the easier it is for us to process on our end, and the less hassle and back and forth, we'll be doing, trying to contact the client. So what do you do in this attestation?
Right, so you're actually going to be able to e-sign here, but it is important that everybody read the language up above. Again, you're giving the Community Action Agency permission. You're releasing your information, so we could contact the landlord that you provided information for. If you, have your utility information there, let's say your fuel vendor, we could contact your fuel vendor to get billing and payment history, other things like that that we may need, again, to verify the amounts of your rent amount, if it passed your utility, anything like that. And other interested parties that we may need to contact in order to get some information. So it's very important that folks actually read through this before they e-sign, because again, you are being kind of held to the standards of the language that's up here. And so, go ahead, Betsy. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and if you aren't the one filling it out, we do have, I think a lot of people think, I don't have time for this. I don't have a computer. I can't get to the library. I don't have internet. But you can have somebody else help you fill this out. So although a lot of people, if they don't have, maybe a lot of people really don't have access sometimes to the internet or computers at home, you can actually be on the phone with a caseworker, a family member, a landlord. Is that correct, Sharon? And they can be helping to fill this out for you?
Definitely, yeah. We've had a lot of landlords assist tenants. It's very important to note that it is the tenant's eligibility, their income, their COVID related pandemic reasons. So again, the landlords can definitely assist, but or their support person, but it is going to be up to the tenant to qualify for the program.
Absolutely. Just because a landlord calls and says that I'm behind on rent doesn't necessarily mean they're going to qualify for the program. This is not just anyone and a catch-all for anything. I know there's a moratorium right now that's going on, and so we're really hoping that people are not going to wait to the very, very end about this program. And if there's landlords out there watching this, we encourage them to share this with their tenants to see how easy it is to apply, set up a time to help them apply for this, because again, waiting until you have thousands and thousands of dollars, it's not insurmountable, but it is a little stressful. So once we fill this all out, Sharon, there's one final step we have to do. I know that. And that is that, for this, no one helped out, is submitting and uploading our documents. So how does that work?
Right, so we're going to submit and upload. So what we can do is it actually brings you to the screen that gives you some great information about how to do that. If you have any questions, there are actually steps here listed. But the main thing is that folks can drop down here. They can choose anything here. So income and expenses, if I had a bank statement, if I had a social security award letter to upload, anything like that. If I had my housing related paperwork, my demand for rent, my lease, anything like that. If you don't find what you're looking for in that drop down, you can always hit other, and it actually gives you a spot to type something in. So if I had something that didn't pertain, like if I had a letter from my employer, I could type that in and just name it that.
Now, Sharon, if I upload my pay stub to where my signed lease is, that's not going to kick my application out, is it?
Nope. It just we're gonna, when we click on it, we'll just be surprised that it's actually your pay stub instead of your signed lease. But yeah, it will not mess up your application whatsoever.
Wonderful. And of course, you're working from a computer where you're going to upload a great picture of a kitten I see here. But the other things that you could do, again, if you're working from a phone, whether it be an Android phone or an iPhone, you can take pictures of some of your documents as well and use those to upload and go from there, or take a picture and send it to the email and get it uploaded. If we can't read it, we will always reach out, which is why you have to have a great email and a great phone number, and answer your emails and phone numbers when we reach out to you, to be able to have us clarify what it is. If we can't read it, we can't help and stuff. So for this one, we're just going to pretend that the application is done, and we will just save and continue. And as you can see, if you haven't done anything correctly, it's obviously going to tell you what you've done incorrectly. So you'll be able to go upload
the upload button.
There you go. She forgot to upload. So it's really sort of, and you can see below what it is you've uploaded. So if someone says, I swear I've uploaded that picture of the kitten as required, we'll be able to tell if it was there and those things. So Sharon, why don't you exit out of the screen, and we'll just ask you a couple more questions here that we have. And thank you. You can see when you're actually done, when you actually have submitted it in, that it'll thank you for submitting it. So we really encourage people to look at their email to make sure afterwards that they get confirmations and links, look for information from us. And about how long does it take to actually process an application? Like once the client's done this and everything's in, then what are those steps?
Right, yeah. So once the required documentation has been received, and again, that's why it's so important to upload with your application if you can. It can usually take somewhere between 5 to 7 business days, depending on whether or not we need to contact the landlord or the utility or anything like that. But again, the more complete the application is, usually the quicker that we are going to be able to get through those things. If you have a landlord that we haven't worked with before, they can definitely feel free to reach out to us via the main email as well on the CAP NH website if they have any questions about the program. We may need some documentation from your landlord if they're brand new to our agency as well. So sometimes getting that paperwork can take a little bit too. But yeah, if it's a completed application, it's pretty quick turnaround as far as getting the vendor paid.
Yes, and having the vendor be paid in those things. And for vendors who are tuning in too, again, the big thing is once you get your information in, we're waiting on that also of potentially your residents. So you may want to work directly with the resident and make sure they've had their information complete. So Sharon, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon to show us how to do this. Again, if anyone has any questions, we encourage you to go to capnh.org. That will give you how to find your local community action and actually more information about community action. We do more than just rental assistance. We do everything from feeding and summer meals to Head Start to weatherization, you name it, we run the gamut. If there's a program and some help that you need, I can guarantee you community action either helps run the program or can get you that service that you need. So Sharon, thanks again. And for all of you out there, good luck with your applications and please make sure you reach out to us. And thank you for watching today.